Hello, Friday here at OCD Gamechangers Facebook page. Yay! My name is Chrissy Hodges, and I am the Executive Director of OCD Gamechangers. I am the author of Pure OCD. I am the co-founder of OCD Peers, a new group practice by myself and my business partner, Melissa Hunter, and we are offering groups all week, different themes, different topics for OCD. They're dropping, they're $35. Yay, visit ocdpeers.com to learn more. It's such a cool resource and we're having a blast. And I also do peer support around the world to help support people and connect people to therapists who can help with OCD. Now, speaking of therapists that can help with OCD around the world, today we have Ashley Annestedt on. Ashley's a member of the OCD Gamechangers board, and we have a very unique topic today that I'm so excited to get to. But first and foremost, Ashley, I'm going to have you introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Ashley Annestedt. I am a licensed clinical social worker, licensed in 6 states, and the clinical director of a new group practice, Beyond Borders CBT. We see patients in 12 states in the United States and various countries around the world. And I also am trained in and practice psychedelic integration in my practice.
Yay, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But first I'm going to put up, this is Ashley's brand new website. It's super cool. Is that right? Did I do it right?
Yeah, let me do it. Yep. Got
it. Yay. So check it out. It's so beautiful and it's so great. And congratulations on that and the expansion of your practice. So, all right. So Fireside Fridays, if you're just joining us for the first time, this started in the COVID era. Wait, we're still in the COVID area. Oh my God. Anyway, it started at the beginning of COVID, mainly because I felt like I was losing my mind. And I was like, I need other people's perspectives. And so I thought, let's just do these fireside chats and get people on and let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about how people are feeling. It was really, really magical to, as everybody was processing and grieving what was happening, to be able to check in with people and really feel like you weren't alone. And so I have extended that beyond COVID to talk about things that are really important in our community, also things that people have a lot of questions about. And this is one of them. I wrote it down, psilocybin. I literally spelled it out so I would say it right.
I clapped it out before we went live.
Psilocybin. And oh, hey, yep. Ethan Smith is here. Yes, we are on the love stream. Woo! The OCD Gamechangers love stream. Woo-hoo! Anyway, we're going to talk about psilocybin.
And psychedelics as a whole, perhaps.
Yes. So this is a really important topic. And I do want to give a disclaimer here. OCD Gamechangers is not doing this in a way that like calling us up and emailing us and being like, hey, can you be our shroom dealer?
Although that could be a lucrative source of income, but we're not going to do it.
It could. We haven't gone there yet. Maybe I'll bring it up at the board meeting next.
Yeah. Good idea.
But there's so much buzz lately around psychedelics and psilocybin and things that are, I feel like, just the next generation of treatment for mental health. I've learned a lot about ketamine, however you pronounce it, and just how powerful it can be for depression and other areas of mental health that people are struggling with. And so it's really exciting to see this stuff going on. Now, I would ask you to watch this and listen with an open mind, because sometimes people go, psychedelics, drugs, bad. No, I will never accept that. Well, if these are things that are really changing people's lives in recovery, then I would really, really invite you to listen and get some information from someone who is more of an expert than stuff that you might read on memes on social media.
Right.
So we're excited today to talk about this. And also, again, we are not saying at all, neither Ashley nor Gamechangers is saying to replace your treatment protocol with shrooms or psychedelics. That is not where this is going. However, let's get started. So Ashley, how are you a good person to talk about this? Like, what makes you really educated and informed in this? And how did you get interested in this?
Yeah. So I am trained in psychedelic integration and have done a significant amount of training through some of the more well-known people in the psychedelic world, you might say. So I have a somewhat unique perspective in that I specialize in the more traditional forms of OCD treatment, but also offer psychedelic integration. So some of the patients that I see for psychedelic integration are already pre-existing patients that, of course, I'm just doing ERP and ACT and more traditional therapies with. And then other people are standalone. They only want to see me for psychedelic integration, and either boat is okay to be in.
Mm-hmm. So could you tell us, tell us what psychedelic integration is, for a fear that people might be like, well, Ashley's down there dealing shrooms out her back door.
Right. Well, maybe it would probably be easiest for me to first explain what it's not.
Yes.
Psychedelic integration is not a patient coming to my office, me giving them any psychoactive, psychedelic compound and being with them through their journey. Instead, psychedelic integration is a therapeutic space to either explore the potentials of a psychedelic experience or to process the experience that they've already had. So we kind of look at it through a harm reduction model, and either pre-session, meaning, or pre-sessions, meaning, sessions that are happening before they might go out and have their psychedelic experience, or post sessions, meaning, of course, we're processing the wide variety of emotions and thoughts, et cetera, sensations that come up after a psychedelic experience.
Okay. And so oh God, I don't know how to ask this question. So
don't worry about it.
This would be someone that is like, okay, I'm going to either go to a clinic that does infusions, or maybe I'm going to explore psychedelics on my own, but I really want some guidance and some support on maybe what could happen or what has happened if things, or how to process it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, the only legal option in the United States to experience at least psilocybin is to be in a clinical trial. And of course, those are wonderful, but those are not accessible for the larger majority of people. And they're kind of at somewhat of a halt due to COVID anyways. And so the belief within psychedelic integration is that, many people have maybe already made up their mind about psychedelics. So whether they come and get some good evidence-based information about it, we can explore their expectations, we can, create a structure of safety, they can learn more about whatever, substance they're considering using. The belief is that they're going to do it whether or not they come to us or me, somebody like me, for that process. And so by doing so, we can ideally reduce harm. I've seen some people for pre-sessions, and then after really learning and exploring what they want to get out of it, they don't have a psychedelic experience because it's not always the best fit for everybody, despite, the fireworks going off in the media about this person had this experience and was cured for X, from X, Y, or Z. It's not like that for everybody.
I definitely want to get to that. But first, can you talk a little about what you mean when you say harm reduction?
Yeah. So in a harm reduction model, we are exploring expectations. Most people come, at least, in the pre-sessions, come with very specific expectations in mind, at least for my practice. I can't speak for other people that offer psychedelic integration. But, 95% of the people that I see for psychedelic integration have OCD or anxiety or a related disorder. And so they've read something in the media and they are exploring psychedelics for that reason, because they read a wonderful story about it. So we look at appropriate expectations. They're given a lot of information, evidence-based information about, any previous studies, any previous research that is available, or ongoing research. We discuss a lot about safety. Is whatever substance you think you're going to get, is it that substance? And so they're giving resources to potentially look at, is what they're getting real? Because obviously a lot of things are tainted these days. And just setting up basic structures of safety. If you have kids, are you planning on doing this while your kids are at home? And hopefully the answer is no. If it is, let's talk about maybe a different plan around that. So it's a lot of safety setting, a lot of safety structure, I would say, psych education and deep exploration into what they anticipate getting out of it, because many people can be disappointed that it's not the miracle cure that they thought, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. As you know, I'm a huge believer in harm reduction, so I'm really excited about this. Tell me a little bit about maybe in your own experience or in getting more information or being in different, because I know that there's a lot more talk these days, different conferences and stuff about this. What's the pushback? Is there a pushback?
Yes. Do you mean more so for me that I feel the general environment of psychedelic as a whole?
Well, I would say maybe from a professional standpoint. So as we know, this is probably the engine's already going. It's going to be rolling. It's just going to be, it's just going to get more and more. So, but the people that are hanging on in the train station, they're like, I ain't getting on board.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, at least in this community, that feels like a lot of the population, a lot of the professional population seems to, I don't want to say they're resistant to it, but instead it's just kind of crickets about it. Yeah.
Can you still see me? I can't see you anymore.
I can still see you, but yeah. So guys, before we started, my camera was a little glitchy, and for some reason we are not successful right now.
Do you want to log out and log back in?
I guess, guys. So sorry about this.
Look, I'll just talk like I have any issues talking.
Crystal has shrooms at her house right now, and so she's going to have a psychedelic experience with you live as we speak. I feel like a newscaster. Join Pussy Live back in 10. I'll log out and back in.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you for joining me. Ashley's going to log. Ashley's in a who knows? She's in a different country right now, so sometimes there's issues with camera, but she's going to log back in. If you're just joining us, we're talking a little bit about psilocybin and psychedelics in the treatment for mental health. I'm going to quickly tell you a little bit. Well, I won't tell you because she's back, but I'll tell you that in a minute. Okay, there we go. Yay! Okay, so the pushback. Ethan says I don't need shrooms. No, we were talking a little bit about the pushback, and then you were saying in this community it's been tough. So what's the hesitation with that?
I don't know that it's resistance or pushback. It's just crickets. I don't know anybody who kind of considers themselves a specialist in OCD on the professional side that knows much about psychedelic integration, with the exception of a very, very small handful of people that I have met in the psychedelic integration training. So I don't know that it's resistance or maybe just, kind of proceeding with caution until some of the trials or the larger trials, I should say, are published. But like you said earlier, it's like you get on board because this train is not stopping. And so if you're a therapist that knows nothing about psychedelics in 5 years, you're going to be really behind the curve. In the same way, if you were to go to a therapist now and mention an SSRI and they said, "What's an SSRI?" You'd be like, I don't know that I want to continue with that person, So in my mind, that's the direction we're heading.
Good. And we'll get to some resources here in a little bit. Okay. So how is, sorry, I have my questions over here. I need to make sure that I have my questions correct on this topic.
I like it.
So, I'm sure that people want to know, when they hear psychedelics, they think about the Grateful Dead concerts and things like that, or techno concerts, which I've had my share of many of those.
Yeah, get your glow sticks out.
I did not go to integrative therapy beforehand, but I had a lot to process after. Anyway, so tell us how what's different about the prospect of thinking I'm really going to, seriously consider bringing psychedelics into my treatment protocol as supplemental versus, hey, I'm going to go out on a Friday night and listen to, Paul Van Dyke or DJ Tiesto and get all lit up and have a trial experience. I mean, both I'm
Well,
sure are equally as fun, but go ahead.
absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking specifically about psilocybin, the research shows us that about 35% of people who have a psychedelic experience with psilocybin in an uncontrolled setting, like a rave, like a Grateful Dead concert, have negative experiences. And about 10 to 15% of that 35% have negative experiences that are long lasting. So it's not just like, oh, this trip is bad, but I'm having some negative side effects, if you will, for weeks, sometimes months, unfortunately, sometimes longer than that, I've even seen in my practice. So set and setting, as we say in psychedelics, is very important. Set means your mindset going into it, kind of the intention that you have behind it. And then, of course, the setting as well. Are you at a concert, with 15 other people that are also having their own experience, or are you somehow trying to create your own therapeutic experience similar to the way that you might see in a clinical trial?
So now, is there any sort of research or documentation to say that if you're going to do this kind of in a clinical trial, kind of a controlled environment, that you're going to be less likely to have a negative experience?
Absolutely. So again, specifically speaking about psilocybin, because that's what I'm most knowledgeable with, and the vast majority of the people that I've worked through psychedelic integration with, psilocybin has been their, chosen substance. I don't know the specific number other than to say, they state generally safe in a very controlled environment. They are typically speaking about clinical trials, though, because they do a lot of course, screening as to who's going to be accepted into a clinical trial. Whereas, if somebody's just having their own experience, I guess they might screen themselves. But that's where psychedelic integration comes in, because not to say that we screen somebody to say whether psychedelics are appropriate or not, but in some ways that happens because we do go over mental health history and family history and making sure there's not a history of schizophrenia, which is one of the things that make people more at risk to have a negative experience with psychedelics. So those things happen in integration as well.
Can you tell us what psilocybin is? I should have asked that probably at first.
Yeah. So if you've ever heard, magic mushrooms,
Really is that.
Yeah. Well, it's the active component in magic mushrooms. Yeah, absolutely.
Do they pull it from those?
Say again?
Like, do they pull this? Where do they?
They're using synthetic. To my knowledge, by the way, I'm not involved in any clinical trials, but to my knowledge, they are using a synthetic form of psilocybin in the clinical trials to assure that everybody's getting the exact same quality, whereas we don't have access to that legally or illegally. So you're consuming, a mushroom in some form, whether typically dried, sometimes people take it in a tea, etc.
Yeah. Okay.
But by all means, do not go looking in your yard, folks, for what you think are psilocybin mushrooms, because you can very easily poison yourself. Please don't do any of that. I hope that goes without saying. But, for the few people that are super excited, don't go in the cow field looking for your own mushrooms.
Don't be going out and look at the cow pies.
No, do not do that. One, a little gross. Two, you might not get the right mushroom and you could probably get sick and die. So let's not do that.
So do you have so the only thing that I've really ever known about other than recreational use in regards to this would be ketamine, however you pronounce it. So what would be the difference in what we're talking about here and people that are using ketamine as a means of helping with their mental health symptoms?
Do you mean what the psychedelic experience would be like, or more
are they
so
the same, or are they just different substances? I'm just trying to.
So they're different substances entirely, and then every psychedelic journey experience is different. So, and I'm sure that people that use psychedelics regularly can attest to that. Your first experience taking psilocybin is different than your second experience, different from your third experience. How I typically explain it to patients to help them get a better grasp on, especially on their expectations of what it might do, is in the same way, three people with equally severe OCD can go get a prescription for an SSRI, an identical prescription, the same dose, but they're going to probably have three different experiences. with their SSRI, right? One person might say it's life-changing, another person might be neutral, and another person might say it's the worst decision they ever made because of side effects. So we see that same spectrum in psychedelics as well.
So when people come to you for psychedelic integration, what are they looking for? Are they looking and if they have a really positive experience with it, what could they expect to have? Now I know this is making a lot of assumptive these are a lot of assumptive questions,
Sure.
but like let's say, if all goes well, what could someone expect for them to really have a positive benefit on mental health?
Yeah. So let me preface my answer with the vast majority of people that I see for integration have OCD, and the vast majority are considering using or have already used psilocybin. So this is only kind of speaking to that unique population. But, in terms of the best effects that I've seen with my patients, almost a reduction in anxiety for some and an increase of tolerance for whatever anxiety is there. So kind of the openness, the willingness to feel whatever comes up. A lot of the things we teach in ACT actually, which is why psychedelic integration under an ACT model is actually published and taught in training, because those two things go hand in hand. So for patients that I see that have had psychedelic integration, have had an experience, and then are seeing me for, traditional treatment, ERP, ACT, et cetera, I notice that they tend to speed through treatment quicker, at a quicker pace. The exposures that we had in mind, the committed actions that we had in mind pre-experience, are now approached with more willingness, like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, whatever. Not a lot of anxiety, hesitancy, fear. And of course, that's not across the board, but in the best case scenarios, that's what we tend to see. And to my knowledge, unfortunately, I don't know of any research ongoing of the impact of psychedelics to traditional therapies. It's more so the impact of psychedelics to just kind of overall functionality, their scores on the Y box, et cetera, rather than how can psychedelics interplay with more traditional, forms of CBT, basically. I'm not going to do the research, but if anybody wants to, please feel free.
So a lot of people, I would think, when they're listening to this, or when they're, when they're hearing more about this, I imagine that they're going to come up with, well, I think that this is really slippery slope, because what if then someone becomes addicted to these substances, and now we're dealing with a whole other monster? So do you have any comments or experience in that, or what you would tell people that might think that?
Yeah. So, what we typically share is that psychedelics are, as of now, a fairly non-addictive substance. I don't know the exact research or literature to quote, but at least anecdotally in my practice, rather than saying, I want to do that again, it's like, oh my gosh, that was such a powerful yet exhausting experience. I hope I don't have to do it for a long time. So very opposite from this urge craving that we typically think of with addiction.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about, and you mentioned this earlier, about how people might go, oh, well, I want to do this psychedelic integration session because I really want to be cured. So talk about how that's perceived in the media versus the actual experience that you see mostly when you're working with people on this.
Yeah. So, just like anything else in the media, are sensationalized. I mean, I'm super excited about the progress in research. I'm a huge advocate for psychedelics, but unfortunately, all you see in the news are these amazing experiences. Very rarely do you hear about the subset of people that have fairly negative experiences. So that's a piece of what psychedelic integration is all about, setting up appropriate expectations so that if somebody does come in and say, I read an article on the, Guardian or whatever about psilocybin for OCD, and I can't wait to be cured, then I'm going to give them some more realistic information. I'm going to talk to them about, the statistics of whatever specific substance they're considering using. and to, not to persuade them to not have an experience, but just to give them enough education around what that experience could look like for you so that you're not incredibly disappointed, right? Anytime we go into anything thinking it's going to be the end all be all and it's not, that's disappointing.
Yeah. And I would say specifically for the OCD community, there's so much, okay, this is going to work this time. This is going to cure this time. And I'm going to try this and I won't have any symptoms. And so managing the expectations that people feel.
Absolutely.
Going with that.
Yeah, so this is not, it could be the next best thing, but I don't know that there's enough research, at least specifically psilocybin for OCD, to say this is it. We have it. This is the end all be all. There's a small handful of studies that did have positive outcomes, but they had small sample sizes. So, the verdict is still out, so to speak. There is ongoing clinical trials for psilocybin specific to OCD, depression, anorexia, alcohol use disorder, end of life care, and a couple other things. And it does have breakthrough status from the FDA specific to depression as well, because it is so promising in that area.
That's great. I've heard so many wonderful stories about ketamine for sure. Even from people I know personally, and just the veil that lifts, after fighting major depressive disorder for so very long. So it's really exciting.
It is, absolutely. And I'm a huge advocate and proponent of the continued research. And, as a professional, it's incredibly fulfilling to see somebody have a positive experience and to be able to integrate that experience not only into life, but into our specific treatment work as well is pretty cool. And I wish I had more professionals to talk about it with, but there's just not that there's not that many of us, at least in the OCD community. There's lots of people that provide integration, but not so many in our little family.
Well, we did just get a comment from Ryan Vidrine. I hope I pronounced your name right, Ryan, but he's great just talking about this. It's definitely going to be changing the field. I'm completing my own psychedelic assisted therapy training currently. Yay! Ashley will be messaging you on LinkedIn to connect further.
All right. I'll be waiting. Wonderful. Yes.
Start the ally team right there.
Absolutely.
A couple more questions. First, I just want to ask this, and, again, just prefacing this question that OCD Gamechangers nor Ashley is going, please run out and start thinking about shrooms or psychedelics tomorrow. We're just providing information, and we're just providing a platform to be able to bring some education that's just more realistic than what you might read elsewhere. So if someone, let's say, successfully integrates psychedelics into their treatment protocol, and this is lifelong. But some people might think, well, I don't know if I can do that because I don't want to just drop acid every time.
Why not? Why don't you?
So if you had somebody that was like, wow, I really just want to explore something, but I'm really scared that, and I don't want to be tripping all the time, how could you help support someone or provide education and kind of an outlook of what things could look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Another concern I would add to that, especially in places where it's still illegal, which is most of the United States, people are afraid they might find it once. It might be this great thing, and then they can't find it again. Similar to, I don't know, if you were on a wonderful SSRI and then they stop making it, like how destructive that might be. In my experience, and of course, this is not with everybody in every practice, you're not looking at ingesting a psychedelic compound every day, not even every week, not even every month. Again, anecdotally speaking, I would say the majority of people that I've worked with will typically have a journey and experience, people label it differently, maybe every 3 to 4 months. So you're talking about, for psilocybin anyways, a 6-7 hour experience for maybe, once every 3 to 4 months. But again, I don't know of any research on that in terms of ongoing to know once people have had a good experience, what does the protocol look like afterwards?
Yeah.
And I think
that's what getting the proper support afterwards is, or working alongside a therapist to look at, is this something you want to pursue? What was the experience like? What's the emotional connection to it? Or Was it negative? Do you not like, it's up to you to not be able to have to try that again.
Sure. And there's such a wide range of experiences and opinions. You'll meet people that say this was an amazing experience, but I never want to do it again. Yeah. And that's okay. Because it is very powerful, typically very emotional, and can be a bit scary as well. Or you'll see people that say, I'm feeling the positive effects of my experience. And so I want to explore what it would look like to almost be on some sort of maintenance, protocol for that. And since the majority of the clinical trials are not necessarily in the early phase, but at least right now, looking at the just initial effects of these compounds, I'm not sure of any studies that are doing kind of long-term, what would a protocol look like, but there could be. MAPS, for those of you that aren't familiar, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, is the professional organization to find all the good research, clinical trials. Everything is very accurate information. So it's not, sensationalized stories.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome. Ethan Smith has a question for you. Okay. Is it really I think he's being funny, but also serious. Okay. Is it really even any different than being numb and a zombie on high doses of SSRI and antipsychotics? All relative, no. It's all altering brain chemistry. We've just been taught drugs are bad. Mm-hmm. Coming from the most straight-laced, water-drinking guy on the planet.
I can only say this from personal experience, and then from the people that I've worked with. If nothing could be more the opposite of numb and zombie-like, again, only in my opinion, than a psychedelic experience. Instead of being numb and shut off from the world, most people will report to you a sense of openness, connection, belonging. You hear people say stories of just feeling an overwhelming sense of love. Everybody has different experiences, of course, but I've never worked with anybody, nor have I ever had the experience of just feeling flat, numb, zombie-like.
Yeah. He then said it wasn't a question, but a comparison. However, I'm glad we got to say that, because I think it's, I think a lot of people, and especially in the OCD community, when this topic has come up and talking with people with OCD, there's a very, what I notice is some strong reluctance of the loss of control of what it will be like on the trip. And as someone, I've done psychedelics in several different forms, and I think like you said before, all of it is how you're approaching it. And there have been times where I'm with people I feel completely comfortable and safe with, and it was just this, every ounce of my body is on fire and open to the world of wow, every feeling around here I'm taking on. But the opposite has happened too, which is I'm taking on every negative feeling. And in hindsight, looking back, those were not good times in my life, where I was with people that I didn't feel safe. I was in environments where I didn't feel safe. I think.
And that all goes back to set and setting, and is an integral part of what we teach or explore in integration. So if somebody is intending on having an experience for a therapeutic gain and is going to tell me that, they're going to ingest X, Y, or Z, and then they're going to go to a party or a rave or a concert, of course, I'm not in the position to tell them what to do, but I am going to ask them to proceed with caution and to tell them why, because that set and setting is so important. The vast majority of people that I've worked with through integration have done it. Of course, they're not in a clinical trial, but have done it in a therapeutic way. Sometimes listening to a soundtrack of music, sometimes the same soundtracks that they do use in the clinical trial. Sometimes people will go in nature. Sometimes people will wear eye shades just like they do in the clinical trials, but always having a sitter with them, a sitter being somebody that they know, absolutely trust. The sitter doesn't necessarily have to have any knowledge of psychedelics. That's nice if they do, because they're going to be somewhat of a better guide. But just somebody that you really, really trust. Because if you go into a psychedelic experience very anxious about, oh my gosh, I don't know half of these people here, It might not always be a bad trip, of course, but you're setting yourself up to have a statistically, probably a less good. That's a very clinical term, isn't it? Less good.
I can attest to that. And after the bad psychedelic experiences I had, like I would look at my Google the day after, and it would like all my Google searches were, how long until mushrooms wear off? Is this ever going to wear off? Am I ever going to be the same?
Absolutely. But like the loss of your sense of control that you mentioned earlier, of course, while that is incredibly anxiety provoking for probably most people with OCD, there's also so much power if you can open yourself up to that, right? That you're not in control of this experience, right?
Yeah, you're not in control, and you let go of control, and you're still safe. Hence why it's important to do it in a therapeutic capacity. So through the whole trip or experience, you feel that safety and almost like the confidence of I can let go and things can be okay.
And not only that you're with somebody safe, but kind of any loose ends are tied up. So if you have kids, they're with somebody that you genuinely love and trust, and you would have them take care of them in any other scenario too, because you don't want to go into an experience with that on your mind either, right? Are my children safe? Those types of things. Even pets. I've had patients to have their pets go to boarding, or have somebody else take care of the dog for the night, just so that they're not worried about the dog, or there's not any interference to their experience because of an animal.
Awesome. Oh, that's so great. Okay. Last question. So where do you see this kind of the psychedelic movement going, or how do you see this integrating in all types of mental health struggles, and how it can help people with all different diagnoses?
I would hope in the next 5 to 10 years that somebody can see a physician that has specific training in psychedelics, psychiatrist, and get a prescription for psychedelic substances that have been proven effective for their specific needs, and get referrals to people like myself who do integration therapy in the same way that you might go get a prescription for an SSRI right now if it's an appropriate fit for you. So what I've been telling the majority of professionals is, even if you have zero interest in psychedelics in terms of adding it to your practice, it's still something that you're going to have to be informed about. No matter how resistant you are to it, you're going to have to be informed about it. And I think a lot of our professional boards will continue to add continuing education, sessions or whatnot to help bring professionals up to date. This was the first year that I've ever seen any talks about psychedelics at conferences. So that was exciting to see finally.
Yeah. And I know that OCD Gamechangers is hoping to, if we can have a conference in person, to have some education on it next spring. So yay. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been super informative. I think that I feel a lot more informed, and I wasn't really resistant to it. I mean, I've done it recreationally. I do have a resistance to feeling like if I'm stuck and then I have to wait it out for 6 hours. But again, kind of hearing that that's usually part of the issue, not being able to really let go and being able to sit there and see that everything is okay. So I definitely would be, after this, being willing to explore that. So I think that that's the point of talking more about it. And hopefully, God, how much suffering we can relieve in the future just from something this exciting. So any resources that you could provide us or anyone watching that may want to get a little bit more information about this?
Yeah. So again, MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, in the same way that we have evidence-based information for OCD, through Gamechangers, through IOCDF, they are definitely the go-to place to learn all about the different substances, the ongoing clinical trials, et cetera. I'm happy to, receive emails and field any questions. Naturally, I can't give anybody any specific recommendations via email, but if a professional wants to connect and, they have any questions about integration or want to be kind of pointed in different directions, I'm certainly happy to do that too.
Great. And that's Ashley's website. So reach out to her if you have questions. Remember, she can't deal drugs out of her house.
Not yet. 2024. We're making it happen. Kidding.
I really appreciate it, Ashley. And yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out to her, or you can reach out to us at ocdgamechangers.com, ocdgamechangers@gmail.com. And thank you again for coming and being part of this fireside chat. I hope that you walk away with more information about what this huge, incredibly hopeful movement is going to be for relieving the suffering for so many people with mental health. We will be back on Monday with Maverick Mondays. No, Monday Mavericks. I always get it mixed up.
They're both good, either way.
We're going to be talking to Elliot Kamenetsky. You will love him. He has a dry sense of humor. So hilarious, so smart, so fun. Yeah, and we're going to be talking to him about my OCD care and all the really cool stuff that he does there. So, Ashley, thank you again, and also thank you for being on our board. You're an absolute asset, and we just appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Chrissy, as always.
And thank you to everybody. We will see you on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.
Great weekend. Bye.